Listening Fanfiction presents If I Only Knew by Wanderlove, based off the Star Wars Cinematic Universe. Narrated for you by Sierra Feast. Chapter 1. Jedi Master Mace Windu frowns viciously at the holotable in front of him, elbows balanced on his knees and entire body leaning forward aggressively. He knows it is a Jedi-like to blame an inanimate object for the headache currently pulsing behind his left eye. And yet,
Don't you not know? Does not belong to you, the Mr. Master has?
Master Yoda's croaky voice breaks through his scowling. Mace lifts his gaze, glancing around the council chamber as he leans back in his chair and consciously tries to smooth his countenance. Based on the concerned gazes around him, he does not do a very good job.
Trouble about you,
Do we have any other knights available that could cover the diplomatic envoy to Ryloth?
He finally asks. Even Piel's brow shoots upward. Yoda and Yaddle tip their heads in eerily similar gestures, and even Plo Koon seems taken aback behind his trademark anti-dox mask.
Do you object to Knight Kenobi's selection?
Ki Adimundi asks.
I thought we had agreed that it was a good fit for him and Padawan Skywalker, a simple, easy mission with a reliable Republic ally, as excellent a choice as any for a Padawan's first time in the field. No, it's not that,
Mace replies.
There is a strong shatter point around the mission.
Strong?
Deppa inquires, and Mace nods once, tightly.
As strong as any I have ever seen, darker too. But I can't tell exactly what the shape of it will be. Too much is still in flux.
Muttering breaks out at this, hushed and uneasy. Yoda tuts and caps his gimmer stick against the chamber floor.
Deny a promising knight and Padawan a valuable opportunity, you would.
Argument breaks out, voices overlapping. Are you suggesting that we knowingly throw an 11-year-old Padawan into a potentially dangerous situation? Adigalia interjects severely. She shakes her head. I cannot countenance that, and I believe that if we presented the facts to Knight Kenobi, he would agree with me.
Vehemently,
Plo Koon adds dryly. Kenobi's propensity to act like an overprotective Mother Tuga when it came to his Padawan was all too well known to council. They had allowed it so far, partly because it was seen as a natural consequence of losing his master so suddenly and violently, but mostly because no one on the council actually wanted to be the one to raise the issue with Kenobi after he nearly bit Keanu Mooney's head off during the last attempt.
It doesn't work like that,
Mace responds testily. He inhales and rubs at the bridge of his nose. He swears the number and severity of its migraines have doubled ever since Kenobi took Skywalker on as his Padawan.
The mission is connected to a shatter point, yes, but I cannot know why or how right now. It is strong and dark, but also cloudy, tangled. For all we know, the actual shatter point is related to something completely incidental. Perhaps Knight Kenobi fails to finish reading a holo report that will prove very important 10 years down the line because he was busy with the mission. Maybe he concusses himself when he trips over a loose wire on his way up to the council chambers.
We cannot allow the possibilities of tomorrow to paralyze us today, Master, Deppa reminds him softly. Mace thinks half the reason she accepted the council appointment was so that she could recite his teaching platitudes back at him at the most inconvenient of times. We must make a decision. With all that has been discussed, who is in favor of assigning the Ryloth envoy to a different path? Masters Plo Koon, Adigalia, and Il Koth raise their hands almost immediately. Saisi Teen and Kiadi Mundi soon join them. A beat. A pause. In another lifetime, another universe, another story, Mace raises his hand slowly and reluctantly, wary of the possibility of sending a child as fearful and wild and full of potential as Anakin straight into the jaws of darkness, even if that darkness was as ill-defined as a shatter point. But in this lifetime, this universe, this story, he doesn't. He doesn't know why. Maybe the Force nudged him, maybe this meeting had dragged on just a touch too long and he just wanted it to be done. Maybe he had seen Knight Kenobi patiently meditating with his padawan in the Room of 1,000 Fountains on the way here, and had thought back nostalgically to doing the same thing with Deppa years and years ago. There's an interminable pause, the other 5 staring at him incredulous. Mace crosses back and leans back, making his decision clear. Yoda breaks out the gimmer stick again, 3 short raps.
Decided it is. To Ryloth, Knight Kenobi, and Padawan Skywalker will go. May the Force be with them.
Anakin stands, spine ramrod straight, and gaze focused forward, his mouth screwed up with determination as he tries to imitate Obi-Wan. Of course, it is this determination that gives him away, veering sharply from the air of placidity that Obi-Wan radiates. Obi-Wan tucks his hands into his robe as they wait for the shockingly large doors to the receiving room to be heaved open. Anakin's eyes dart over, and then he copies the motion.
When I am feeling nervous, Padawan, I like to hide my hands in my robes,
Obi-Wan says conversationally. He knows from awkward experience how well Anakin would take Obi-Wan pointing out that nervous feeling racing across their training bond. He tries to shield, and he's gotten better at it for the most part, but his strength in the Force and the unexpected depth of their training bond work against him. Most of the time, he cannot help but project his feelings to Obi-Wan.
It allows me to fiddle with my hands, with everybody else none the wiser.
You, nervous master. Anakin's voice is a mixture of light teasing and genuine curiosity.
You've obviously never had to face down the council after your Padawan was arrested for illegal street racing,
Obi-Wan returns dryly.
For the 3rd time.
Anakin turns crimson, but the banter does its job, and the bond is now filled with a mixture of determination and anticipation as the doors finally swing open. Obi-Wan strides forward, rolling his eyes internally at the bloated size and opulence of the room in front of him. It will surely take them at least a minute to fully traverse its length and come to where their host is seated. He uses the opportunity to take some deep breaths and center himself. For all his brave words, he is nervous. He's been deployed on plenty of assignments since his knighting, but in the early days, when the council had suggested that Anakin was not ready for full-fledged missions, Obi-Wan had all too gratefully seized on the excuse to leave Anakin in the temple. He hadn't been, probably still wasn't if his racing heart was any indication, quite ready to be responsible for another Jedi's life, not when he had failed so spectacularly on Naboo. Obi-Wan glides to a stop at the head of the room and offers a shallow bow, feeling a small spark of approval across the bond when, out of the corner of his eyes, he notices how Anakin copies him. Not flawlessly, a little too stiff, but good. Anakin's satisfaction practically blinds Obi-Wan in the Force as they straighten.
Senator Frita, I thank you for your hospitality.
Obi-Wan begins, warm and open, and yet the epitome of Jedi calm, in that way that Qui-Gon had imparted to him.
I am Jedi Knight Obi-Wan Kenobi, and this is my Padawan learner, Anakin Skywalker.
In a split second, the mood of the room tilts, shifts, and recrystallizes into something far different, and Obi-Wan has the terrible feeling that he said something wrong. Mutters and whispers are rolling across the room, but he can't figure out what exactly triggered it. He's barely opened his mouth.
Skywalker, ha! Poor little slave boy trying to be a Jedi.
Someone snickers and rill before another shushes them. Obi-Wan's head snaps to the disturbance, eyes narrowed partly in protectiveness and partly in confusion. While he knows that slave has a particularly nasty context for Twi'leks, he's unsure why the epithet is applied to Anakin or what prompted it. He takes a step closer to his Padawan, whose embarrassment and shame are pouring across the bond. Obi-Wan does a double take as he takes in Anakin's raised chin and pale face. For all that Anakin doesn't understand the Twi'lek language, he clearly understands what has happened, perhaps better than Obi-Wan does. At loss of what exactly to do, Obi-Wan expends a small tendril of confusion, questioning, let me help, to his Padawan, but Anakin only blanches further and slams up the shields in his mind. Obi-Wan is taken even further aback. Anakin is still learning, so Obi-Wan can see where he could poke and prod in order to slip in, but they are still impressive for someone of his age and level of training. It appears that all Anakin needed to learn this particular lesson was sufficient motivation. Senator Frita seems equally embarrassed and hurries to speak of the whispers. "Ryloth is happy to welcome the Jedi," he booms.
Come, come, come. We have arranged a tour of the capital for you. Only the best for our guests."
"That sounds lovely," Obi-Wan says, voice mild as his mind races in a million directions. He desperately wants to pull Anakin aside and shake him, demand to know what had happened. But if he did that, he would only be highlighting Anakin's embarrassment to this crowd. "We would be delighted to accept. But do not think for a minute, dear Padawan, that I will not be questioning you thoroughly the moment we are alone in our quarters." Obi-Wan thinks. He can only hope Anakin can hear him through his suddenly quite silent shields. Many, too many, hours later, they manage to escape their well-meaning, chattering guides and make their way into their assigned rooms, far more luxurious than anything the temple has to offer. Obi-Wan settles to the floor cross-legged and allows Anakin a brief respite to remove his tabards and wash his face, but once he feels that Anakin is lingering in the fresher solely to avoid him, he gives their bond a big, annoyed poke! Anakin trudges out of the fresher, as if walking to a meditation session with Master Windu, shoulders slumped as his eyes open wearily. Obi-Wan gestures to the floor in front of him, and Anakin wordlessly obeys, folding himself down into a copy of Obi-Wan's cross-legged pose. There is silence for several long minutes as Obi-Wan turns words over in his mouth, deciding what to ask. "I'm sorry, Master," Anakin says, finally breaking the silence, as he always does when Obi-Wan is too quiet for too long. His Padawan fidgets. "I didn't mean to cause trouble. My problem, Padawan, is that only you and our hosts seem to understand what has transpired," Obi-Wan says finally. "I have been left quite in the dark as to what exactly you are apologizing for." "Oh, you don't know." Anakin sounds hopeful, and Obi-Wan levels him with an unimpressed look. That's Anakin's, "Maybe I could read a lot of this" tone. "I understand the gist of it," Obi-Wan replies. "I do not believe the Twi'leks knew that I am fluent in Ryl." "I mean, I don't know exactly what they were saying and all," Anakin replies. "I can guess, you know. But it's okay, because even if I did, I wouldn't hit them or anything. And I won't. I'm getting a lot better at controlling my temper. I'm sorry it happened at all. Just please don't send me back to the temple." "Dear one, no one is going back to the temple quite yet," Obi-Wan interjects gently, reaching out to lay a hand across his shoulder. "You seem to think I'm angry with you, and that's not it at all. I am just trying to understand why everyone we've met has suddenly started calling you a slave." "Oh." Anakin seems a bit confused by Obi-Wan's confusion. It's because of my name." A pause. "Your name?" Obi-Wan prompts when it's clear Anakin has no desire to continue, even as a sickening sort of feeling begins to grow in his belly. "Skywalker. It's a name we take when we're sold too young to remember our families. In Mos Espa, there were probably 6 or 7 other Skywalkers. Do you guys not have slave names in the Corps?" "Anakin," Obi-Wan says with all the calm he does not feel. "Are you telling me that you were a slave on Tatooine?" "Yes." Obi-Wan's other hand, the one not resting on Anakin's shoulder, clenches into a tight fist against his thigh, nails nearly drawing blood. "And how exactly did you come to be following Qui-Gon?" "Oh, well, he won me in a bet," Anakin says. He seems on surer ground now, recounting moments from a grand adventure. "With the parts for your ship." "A bet," Obi-Wan repeats flatly. He thinks rather uncharitably that most of his Padawan days have been spent cleaning up after Qui-Gon Jinn's flair for dramatics and complete thoughtlessness, and it now appears his knighthood will be more of the same. "Please tell me he at least disabled your slave ship." "Yep! He told me I was free, and then I told him I wanted to be a Jedi, and we came back to your ship, and you know the rest. The healers removed the chip entirely when I was at the temple. That way it couldn't be activated again." "Didn't Master Qui-Gon tell you? Or the council?" Anakin asks, scrunching up his nose. "You would think this would be perfectly logical information for me to know," Obi-Wan says, hysteria beginning to edge his voice. "Especially considering that I'm your Obi-Wan freezes, wide-eyed. Anakin doesn't seem bothered now, but Obi-Wan swallows and adjusts. "Especially considering that you're my Padawan, and a small detail like this just might be important." Anakin nods solemnly. I should have known the Twi'leks would understand what the name meant, he said. There were lots of Twi'lek dancers in Gardulas. I should have warned you. But it's okay next time. We could just not say my name. Or come up with a fake name, like we're undercover. Just don't... Anakin hesitates, and Obi-Wan squeezes his shoulder in encouragement. Just please don't make me change it permanently. Names are important. At that last sentence sounds like he's reciting a hymn or a prayer, and Obi-Wan briefly spares a thought to if Anakin had been raised religiously. He'd never said anything before now, but he hasn't said anything about a lot of things apparently, and if he had been raised as a slave, this silence about personal details, his desire to keep anything about his life private makes a lot more sense. Suddenly a lot of things about Anakin were starting to make a lot of sense.
I would never ask you to change your name, dear one,
Obi-Wan says quietly. He moves his hand from Anakin's shoulder to his hand. He picks up the tiny hand and covers it with both of his.
Either permanently or for a mission, and I would like to apologize to you.
For what, Master?
Please don't call me that.
Obi-Wan winces. Anakin's head tilted adorably, padawan braid swinging around his shoulder.
What, you mean not call you Master? Why? I understand why the term may be uncomfortable for you.
Not really, Anakin shrugs. It's different in basic. I always had to speak Huttese with Watto and Gardula, and I know it doesn't mean the same thing to you. Besides, what else would I call you, Master? Obi-Wan winces again.
Okay, then let's say I'm uncomfortable with it, given the context. I do not want anyone here to think that I am your... master, like that.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Good, but back to my point. I am truly sorry, Anakin. I should have made more of an effort to learn of your past. When I first met you, I assumed you were from a poor family on Tatooine and left it at that. I suppose the council thought that Qui-Gon had told me, but there was hardly any time to breathe in between Tatooine and Coruscant and Naboo, and then... But that's no excuse.
It's okay, Anakin reassures him. It really doesn't matter. I'm not a slave anymore. And I'm never, ever going to be one again.
No, you will not, Obi-Wan promises him fiercely. But do you remember when I told you of Padawans and Masters, when we were on Naboo?
Anakin scrunches up his face. That Padawans are still learning and they can't do it alone. But also the Master can't do it all for them either because the Padawan must work hard. Masters are there as a, guide.
Yes, exactly. And part of guiding anyone is understanding where they are coming from. It is very hard to give someone directions to Dex's Diner if you don't know where on Coruscant they're starting.
Yeah! Anakin says, pricking up on his understanding. He sobers a bit. So you're saying that you may have given me bad directions because you didn't know about me being a slave?
Exactly right,
Obi-Wan says, a rush of fondness filling him. He cannot even begin to fathom all the mistakes he has made over the past year and a half, but whatever damage he has done, Anakin's brilliant, adaptable mind remains unchanged. He squeezes Anakin's hand.
Now, with that in mind, let's meditate together.
Anakin's face gives a small twist of displeasure, but he settles down into a meditation pose without further complaint, so Obi-Wan is willing to put it in the wins column. It's not quite calm. Obi-Wan suspects Anakin's mind will never be as calm as the typical Jedi's, but he finds that the thought does not bother him as it should. As long as he can give Anakin the tools to calm the noise in his head to some extent so that he can breathe and think clearly, it hardly matters that he will likely never be able to join Obi-Wan for hours and hours of peaceful contemplation. Joint meditation sessions that stretch for hours, linked with dozens of other nights, is one of the most genuinely moving and soothing things that Obi-Wan has ever experienced. But he understands that it likely never will be the same experience for Anakin.
Focus on untangling your feelings, Anakin, particularly about today. Turn them over, examine them in your mind's eye until you feel you have learned what you can from them, and then release the feeling into the Force.
Satisfied with Anakin's progress that he can monitor through the bond, Obi-Wan sinks fully into his own meditation, determined to re-examine each and every moment of Anakin's apprenticeship and prepare himself for the upcoming check-in holocall to the Council. He doesn't think Master Yoda will allow him to get away with screaming and raging like a lunatic! So he desperately needs to calm his heartbeat, center his mind, and most importantly, brainstorm some terribly cutting one-liners that can sufficiently express his displeasure in the absence of said screaming and raging. Obi-Wan smiles serenely, infinitely cheered by the prospect. Obi-Wan inhales once, deeply. then pushes out the air in 2 short exhales as he positions himself in front of the holorecorder. His eyes dart to the side, just out of the view scope, where he's stationed Anakin with a handful of spare droid parts to keep his hands busy. He knows it is too much to hope that Anakin will actually listen to him if he is asked not to eavesdrop on Obi-Wan's conversation with the Council. Obi-Wan had been a padawan himself not so long ago, thank you very much. But he at least hopes that the mechanical puzzle the droid provides will give Anakin something to hide behind when Obi-Wan has to point out awkward topics. He remembers all too well how much he hated when Qui-Gon Jinn would talk about him as if he wasn't right there and able to hear every word. Master Yoda's wrinkly face flickers to life in front of him, the other counselors winking into existence around him. Obi-Wan bows deeply and straightens.
For us, the report you have.
Master Yoda prompts when Obi-Wan is disinclined to break the silence first. He has noticed the strangely tensed postures of the counselors. Had they known what sending a child named Skywalker to Ryloth would do? He shakes off his confusion and straightens his shoulders.
Yes, masters. But we have limited time allotted for this call, and so I request that we first discuss an important matter that was recently brought to my attention.
Some of the counselors, including Masters Windu and Yoda, exchange knowing glances.
Continue,
Master Windu says with a tilt of his hand and a wave of his hand.
Were you aware that when Master Jin found Anakin on Tatooine, he was a slave?
Silence greets his question. He gets the feeling he has surprised the council. They were expecting something, just not what he ended up asking.
Qui-Gon informed us shortly before you left for Naboo, so that we could arrange to have the boy's slave chip surgically removed.
Master Windu replies.
I myself was only recently made aware of this fact,
Obi-Wan says, tone pleasant, light, as if he was commenting on the weather.
What? Surely Qui-Gon...
Master Ki-Adi-Mundi begins, outraged.
Qui-Gon never said anything on the journey to Coruscant, and as you well know, he and I were not exactly on speaking terms during the events immediately leading up to the battle for Naboo.
Anakin's head flashes up at this proclamation, curious, but Obi-Wan continues on.
In fact, in 18 months, the issue has not been raised, not a single time. I take it the issue was raised, on Ryloth?
Master Windu asks, frowning. Obi-Wan inclines his head in acknowledgement.
It very nearly derailed our diplomatic efforts, through no fault of Anakin's, he adds, but the Twi'leks have a complicated history with slavery, and because I had not the faintest clue what was going on, I had no idea how to respond. For that reason alone, I should have been informed, to say nothing of the fact that as his master, I am entitled to his full physical and mental health history.
A conscious oversight, it was not,
Master Yaddle responds sharply.
Appreciated, your tone is not. Guilt you assigned was? Guilt you feel, perhaps, Never asked you did.
Master Yoda obeys. Obi-Wan inhales deeply, swallowing his immediate urge to snap.
And I take responsibility for that, Master Yoda. But I have come to you, personally, many times since my knighting, asking for help and guidance, as I hoped Anakin adjust to temple life.
Obi-Wan's voice drops to a fierce whisper, all too aware of Anakin's keen attention on the conversation at hand.
I came to you just a fortnight ago concerned with the persistence of his nervous about his mother. Did it never occur to you to raise the issue then? Did you not think that the two might be linked? That he might fear his mother would be hurt or killed not because he was panicking and allowing attachment to cloud his judgment, but because it was a very real possibility? She's a newly freed slave in hot space anticipating danger to her person is perfectly reasonable. Your advice to me, to Anakin, was senseless and cruel.
Master Yoda blinks once, slowly. Then his ears droop.
Correct you are, Knight Kenobi.
Obi-Wan's mouth hangs open for a moment, a little startled to have won the argument so quickly. He still has at least 45 minutes of pre-prepared material.
I am glad you understand my position, Master Yoda,
Obi-Wan says, finally, trying to refine the thread of his speech.
Surprised you are,
Master Yoda heaves a sigh.
Reminded me of Yan. Your eloquence and determination does. Challenged me, he did. Allow me to grow complacent, he did not. You truly are the grand padawan of my padawan.
You are right, Knight Kenobi, Master Plo Koon offers gently. You know, we know it, and there is no need to belabor the point. Our actions, though without malice, harmed a youngling. There is nothing to say to that, except that you are right.
Bring forth Anakin Skywalker if you will. Apologize to him we must,
Master Yoda says, tone final. Obi-Wan looks over to his padawan, who has abandoned his droid parts and any pretense of nonchalance, and is staring wide-eyed at Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan nods and beckons him forward, and Anakin scrambles to take up his customary position in front of his master, Obi-Wan's hands balanced on his shoulders. With a pang, he notes that his hands settle much higher than they did a year and a half ago, and he makes a note to talk to the quartermaster about ordering yet another new set of robes for his padawan's even ganglier limbs.
Anakin Skywalker,
Master Windu greets.
do you understand what has happened?
Yes, sir. Anakin nods.
Understand mistakes we made, do you? Hurt you we have?
Yes. Master Obi-Wan explained that part too. Anakin replies. I really don't feel hurt.
Accumulate. Faster. These hurt can. Apologies for that we do. Guided you well we have not.
I accept your apology, Anakin offers. Obi-Wan feeds warmth and support through the bond. Most of it didn't really matter, at least not to me, except I am still really worried about my mom. Does this mean it would be okay for me to calm her? Of course, Obi-Wan breaks in smoothly before any of the counselors can speak up. You had our earlier conversation, and we'll talk more later to make sure you understood it. I see no reason why we can't arrange a call. Do you have a gun?
Oh!
Anakin visibly perks up, then droops again, staring at his boots. I mean, I memorized Watto's. Hopefully she's still there. Mom's a good mechanic, taught me everything I know, so I don't know why he'd sell her. But if he did, I don't know if her new master will allow her to call me.
What?
Anakin finally seems to notice the 13 horrified sets of eyes trained on him. There is absolute deadening silence. The only sound in the room, the hum of the holoprojector. Finally, Master Plo Koon clears his throat.
Padawan Skywalker, is your mother still a slave on Tatooine?
Yeah. I mean, yes, sir.
Master Yoda's eyes blink close, as if in pain, and there are audible inhalations of horror from everyone else.
Qui-Gon Jinn!
Master Windu mutters, finally breaking the silence.
What the actual criff?